Hey there and welcome back to the podcast. This is episode number 45. And in this episode, we're going to be taking a look at a super cool technique that you can use to create a sense of calm, serenity and relaxation. And the beauty of this technique is that it's something that you can do anytime, anywhere, and it requires very little effort. It's also something that will improve your observation skills. It will help you see the bigger picture so you don't get obsessed or overly concerned with details, and it can also be used as part of a spiritual practice. Intrigued? Well, you should be. So grab a cuppa or whatever you do when you're listening to your podcasts, and let's get started. Hey there and welcome to the Stress Less Living podcast. My name is Stephen Burns and I've been a practicing coach, trainer and hypnotherapist for 25 years. Each week I'll share easily digestible bite-sized ideas that you can immediately put into practice so that you can live a more harmonious and balanced life. Because life is challenging, but whatever we encounter, we always have a choice. We can take the easy routes or the hard routes, the low stress way or the high stress way. Well, the Stress Less Living podcast is about always looking for the easy routes in life, the low stress ways to accomplish your goals, get more of what you want, and ultimately live a happy and more effortless life. So if you're looking for the perfect antidote for the chaos of modern life, my friend, you are absolutely in the right place. So let's get started. And in this episode, I'm going to be taking you through something called the Peripheral Vision Technique. And this can be useful in lots of different ways. First of all, as I mentioned in the intro, it can be used to create feelings of calm, relaxation, and serenity. When you shift into peripheral vision, and I'll be talking a bit about how to do that pretty soon, you automatically trigger feelings of calm and, physical relaxation. It's kind of like you're giving your brain the signal that everything is okay. You are completely safe. And this just calms down your neurology. So it can be really useful as a technique to rebalance yourself. We do live in a world that is constantly pulling us in so many different directions. It can be pretty overwhelming and it's super easy to lose our center. So the peripheral vision technique can be great when it comes to neutralizing these everyday stresses and just calming our system down. The second thing it helps with is it also helps you be more in the present moment. And this, of course, is something that we all want. So many people say they want to be more present. They're so distracted, it's unbelievable. So the peripheral vision technique helps create a kind of soft focus that brings you into a really nice, trancey, mellow state. The mind naturally starts to quieten down as a result of this, and it helps you just naturally slip into the present moment. When we shift into peripheral vision, we feel more connected with our environment and the people in it, and we temporarily let go of the need to strive, force, or control. It's kind of like we shift from doing to just being. And the third thing that this technique can be really useful for is as a bridge into meditation, as a kind of primer. So in my own meditation program, a thing called The Peaceful Professional, I talk about this a lot. One of the big concerns that people have when they're trying to meditate is that they just can't concentrate. There's too many thoughts swimming around inside their mind. And the reason why this happens is because often they're trying to go straight from their busy working lives into the meditation in one single step. And it's just too big of a jump. So by going into peripheral vision first for a few moments or even a few minutes, then it calms everything down. It acts as a nice bridge, a smooth transition into the meditation. And most of the time when people do this, distractions naturally dissolve and lack of concentration is no longer a problem. And the fourth reason why the peripheral vision technique can be so useful is it can also be used as part of a spiritual practice. So I'm aware that I did use the S word there, spiritual, and that tends to get two types of responses. The first response is, are you going to talk about religion here, or are you going to start bringing out the crystals and chanting to angels? Or the second response, people are totally into it. It's very much their thing. So just to clarify, I like to think of spirituality in a very practical way. For me, spirituality is not about religion. But for you, it might be, and hey, that's totally cool. Also, for me, it's not about wearing crystals and chanting to angels. But again, if that's you, then go for it. You do you. But for me, spirituality is, first of all, about believing that you have a core essence that is you. Now, of course, you build on top of that as you learn and grow as a human being, but there is a core essence beneath all of that is essentially you. And secondly, spirituality is where you appreciate that you are part of something bigger. It's where you appreciate and connect with the greater systems that you belong to. And of course, some people use religion for that, but you don't have to. To give you an example, one of the things I like to talk about quite a lot is something called the ripple effect. So this is the idea that everything that you do will have an effect that goes beyond you. For example, if you went out into the world and helped one person, nothing crazy, maybe you just made them smile, you made them laugh, or you maybe even helped them, solve a problem that they had. Well, the positive benefits of that interaction won't just stop at that person. They'll then go back into their lives, and that will have a positive effect on everyone around them. And then they'll go out, and then whatever they do will have a positive impact on the people around them, and the whole thing starts to ripple out. It's a little bit like if you throw a stone into a pond. You get an immediate splash as it enters the water, but then right after that, something magical happens. It ripples out in every direction. And that's what happens when you go out there and you help other people and you're attempting at least to make a positive difference in the world. So I think there's always going to be a spiritual element to that. Nothing that you do happens in isolation. It always affects the greater systems that you belong to. So with peripheral vision, it helps you see and connect with the bigger picture, the greater systems that you do in fact belong to. Nothing that you do happens in isolation. Everything that you do will make some kind of difference. And you can't appreciate and connect with that if you're all head down, tunnel vision, just focusing on individualistic goals all the time. So that's a setup. Let's get into the meat, shall we? So what is the peripheral vision technique? Well, it's to do with the way that you use your eyes. So in general, there are two ways that we can use our eyes when we are when we are looking at our world. The first is foveal vision, and the second is peripheral vision. So foveal vision is where we have a narrow focus. It's where we're paying attention to detail. So for example, if you were reading a book, you'd be focusing on the words, or if you were driving and you were looking at road signs, you'd maybe be squinting and narrowing in to see what the road sign says to make sure you're adhering to the speed limit. When you do that, you'll be in foveal vision because you'll be focusing in on details. And if you do foveal vision to the extreme, that's often referred to as tunnel vision, where you're really narrowing in on something at the exclusion of everything else. Whereas with peripheral vision, you soften the eyes and you allow your vision to widen. So rather than focusing on detail, you relax your eyeballs. I know that sounds a bit weird. And you allow your vision to defocus, to broaden and take in more of the bigger picture. So when you're in peripheral, you should be able to make out what's to the left of you, what's to the right of you, what's above you and below you, without having to move your head. What you see will be defocused and slightly blurry, of course, but you'll still be able to get the general gist of what's there. There's a good chance as well you'll be able to see changes in movement a lot better with peripheral vision as well. So that's foveal and peripheral, and each of these have their uses. Foveal vision, for instance, is great for picking out detail, for focusing on specific tasks, and for going after our goals. Sometimes we need to focus in and blank everything else out. But there is a downside, especially if we do this too often. What it also does is it kicks in our sympathetic nervous system. So this is the part of us that's responsible for producing adrenaline. And when we do this to the extreme, it can trigger our fight or flight responses. And this makes sense from an evolutionary perspective. In prehistoric times, if we were being physically threatened, we needed to either completely focus on the threat so we could fight it, or the exit so we could run away. And foveal vision does this. But the problem is, in modern day times, if we fast forward to right now, when you use your eyes like this too often, we end up adding extra stress and anxiety in our life that doesn't need to be there, because we're continually producing adrenaline and potentially even triggering triggering our fight or flight responses. And if you think about the way modern society is set up, we look at screens all day, we answer emails, we focus on our phones and read text messages. The world is set up in a way to make us use foveal vision a lot. So it's no wonder that people reach the end of their day and they're utterly exhausted and totally stressed out. And that's where peripheral vision comes in. When we go into peripheral vision, it activates our parasympathetic nervous system, or PNS for short. And this is the part of the nervous system responsible for feelings of calm, relaxation, well-being, and improved digestion. When our PNS activates, it lowers our levels of cortisol and adrenaline, the stress hormones as we mentioned a moment ago. It counteracts the fight or flight response. Breathing naturally becomes more regular and deep. It pulls us into this much more mindful state, and it triggers a light state of meditation. If you want to go all hypnotic, it can actually also be used to trigger a light state of hypnotic trance, which feels really, really nice. Are you someone who struggles with work-life balance? You find it difficult to maintain harmony between career ambitions and your personal well-being. You're doing your best to balance demands and deadlines with the other important aspects of your life, but things like burnout, stress, and a nagging sense of guilt seem to forever lurk in the background. Well, one of the best first steps that you can do to create more balance is to do a full life audit. This is a powerful process that helps you highlight areas of your life that are a little bit out of sync that potentially need addressing so that you can be more in harmony. So if you want to do a life audit, then I have a free PDF that will take you through the entire thing. To get access to that, please check the show notes. You'll see a link and all the information you need. Also, as I mentioned earlier on, shifting into peripheral vision helps you see the bigger picture. A lot of people who are in sports, especially team games, so football or soccer, for example, they play in peripheral vision. And this allows them to see what's going on with the entire field, the entire game. And as a result, they can respond to what's going on a lot better. And also, being able to see the bigger picture like this is essential when it comes to problem solving. I don't know if you've noticed, but a lot of the time when we struggle to solve a problem, we can end up getting too focused on the details. We can't see the forest for the trees. But when we pan the camera back, all of a sudden, the solution is obvious. So peripheral vision takes us out of that narrow focus and into a broader appreciation of what's going on. And it allows us just to see things that we didn't see previously when we were really focused in on all of the details. So the analogy I like to use for this is it's a little bit like doing hill walking and then reaching the top of the hill and then looking out into the distance. Because if you think about it, when you're climbing up a hill, you'll be focusing in, won't you? You'll be in foveal vision. You'll be paying attention to the terrain so that you don't slip or trip up, so that you make sure that you take the right path. You'll have a very narrow focus. But when you reach the top of the hill, what do? What does everyone do when they do hill walking and they get to the top? Almost everyone, they look out at the expansive view and they go, wow, that's incredible. Their awareness starts to widen and broaden. They take in the bigger picture so that they can enjoy the view. And it feels absolutely amazing. Well, this is pretty much what you do when you go into peripheral vision. You widen what you're seeing, you broaden your vision so that you can take in the overall landscape. And this then allows you to see and connect with the larger world that you belong to. And I think this is also where the spiritual element comes into it. When you reach the top of the hill and look out, you realize that you are part of something greater. You appreciate that you're not just in this little box that is your world. I know it sometimes feels like that, but you are part of something that is much larger, that's much more important. And I think that's why it can feel so amazing, because your awareness becomes much more expansive and you start to connect with this greater landscape, this bigger picture. So that's the difference between foveal and peripheral vision. And obviously this technique is about shifting into peripheral vision more often. As I mentioned, the world forces us to be in foveal vision way too much. And this is activating adrenaline, fight or flight responses, all the things I mentioned a moment ago. But when we go into peripheral vision, we automatically start to trigger feelings of calm, relaxation, serenity, and all of those other benefits that I've pointed towards. So let's have an experience of this, shall we? It's one thing to talk about it, but I want this to be rooted in your experience. So wherever you are right now, I want you just to stop for a moment, and I want you just to become aware of how you're using your eyes. If you want, you can go grab a chair and make yourself a little bit more comfortable to do this. But if you're not able to do it, you can still go through this exercise. It's fairly easy to do. So what I want you to do, first of all, is I want you to go into extreme foveal vision, just so that you've got a bit of a contrast. So I'd like you just to pick a spot and really stare at it. And I want you to almost like mildly strain your eyes as you're doing it. You might look like you're a little bit stressed out, a little bit anxious. And strangely, when people are anxious, they do go into extreme foveal vision like this. So you might find that you trigger feelings of stress. You might start to feel a little bit uncomfortable in your body, but that's fine. That's okay. We're going to change that in a moment. So as you just notice what it feels like when you're in extreme foveal vision, I want you to then just allow your eyeballs to soften. Like I said, as weird as that sounds, I want you just to imagine what would it be like if you could just relax your eyes and allow them to defocus slightly. Now, you don't have to make them blurry, but just allow them just to softly defocus. And as you do so, I want you just to allow your awareness to widen. So before, when you were in foveal vision, you had a very narrow focus. So now I'd like you to broaden and widen that. And I want you just to become aware of what's to the left of you, what's to the right of you, what's above you, what's below you. But without having to move your head, you're just aware of it in your peripheral. And I want you just to spend a little bit of time in this place. And just notice how that feels different to a moment ago when you were experiencing foveal vision. And you might even want to stand up for a little bit. You maybe want to move about and stay in peripheral vision as you do so. Now, you might find that you flip out of it. That's totally fine. Just guide yourself back into that more peripheral way of experiencing your world and just try it on for size for a few minutes. You can even pause this episode if you like and just wander about your house or whatever it is you're doing, but do it in peripheral vision. And the key thing is, I'd like you to do this for a few minutes and just become aware of how it shifts the way that you feel and the way that you experience the world. There's a very good chance that you start to feel kind of trancy and things begin to mellow out. That is your parasympathetic nervous system being activated. You're automatically starting to trigger feelings of calm, relaxation, and serenity. Also, how does it affect how much of the world you take in? A lot of people say that they start to be much more aware of things in their surroundings. And that makes complete sense because you've broadened your awareness. You're not just focusing on one specific thing. You're taking in the entire picture, the entire landscape. So I want you just to have a play about with this. Like I said, you can pause the podcast if you want and just enjoy this for a few minutes. And then once you've done that, just spend a few moments reflecting on your experience. If you're someone who likes to journal, then you can jot some notes down in your fancy journal that I'm sure that you have, but just spend some time reflecting on what just happened. So that is the peripheral vision technique. And what should have happened is you should have started to feel an automatic sense of calm, relaxation, and serenity. It's kind of like you go into this trancey, mellow place, but also you just feel more connected with your surroundings because you no longer have this really narrow focus. You've broadened your awareness to include more of your whole environment, so you feel more connected with it. So now that you've had an experience of peripheral vision, how can you use this in your daily life? Well, really, the key is just to practice it. Spend more time in peripheral vision. I would recommend, first of all, just take 10 minutes in your day and deliberately shift into peripheral vision and then stay there. Just enjoy it for those 10 minutes. And you might find it's a little bit tricky at first, but the more that you do it, the easier it becomes. And the beauty of this is you can do it in most places at most times. Maybe you're on the train on the way home from work. That's a great place to do it. Or maybe you're just walking home from your office or from your workplace. Again, that's a fantastic time to do it. Personally, I like to do what I call peripheral vision walks. So I usually do this at lunchtime. I've most likely spent a long time staring at screens in the morning. So I just go for a walk in a park that's quite close to my office and I just shift into peripheral vision and I can just feel everything automatically calming down. It's like a reset, a way to rebalance. One thing I do want to say though, in terms of practical side of things, is don't just go into peripheral vision for a few seconds and then go, okay, that's me, I'm done for the day. To get the most out of it, you need to spend a few minutes on it. I like to go for a minimum of 5 minutes when I'm doing this, but usually I spend a lot longer in it. I'll shift into it multiple times during the day. And sometimes it takes a wee bit of time to get into it, and that's absolutely fine. But don't just do it for a few seconds and then go, okay, that's me, I've done my peripheral vision. You want to spend a bit more time with this. And I know I really shouldn't have to persuade people to spend 5 minutes of their time to do something, but I do find that nowadays everyone is in so much of a rush. They want to move on to the next thing as quickly as they possibly can. And I do get that. I think it is a result of social media and the on-demand culture that the internet revolution has created. I totally get that, but this constant search for instant gratification can really get in the road of having meaningful experiences. So please give yourself some time with it, exercise some patience, and you'll get so much from this technique. One thing a friend of mine liked to do was to set an alarm on his watch for a specific time and then put it on a daily repeater. And when it went off, he would spend as much time as he could for the next hour in peripheral vision. And he said it was utterly life-changing. He still does it to this day. It gave him a sense of calm, relaxation, and mindfulness that he struggled to experience up until that point. So I think that's quite a cool thing to try out. Give it a go if you fancy it. So that is the peripheral vision technique, a fantastic little tool to add to your repertoire. Super simple, easy to do. Anyone can do it, and you can do it practically anywhere, anytime. So why wouldn't you add this to your life? So let's do a quick review. So the peripheral vision technique can do multiple different things. First of all, it triggers a feeling of calm, relaxation, and serenity, activates the parasympathetic nervous system. It can also help you see the bigger picture, so you don't get obsessed with details. You start to be able to see the forest for the trees. And it can also be part of a spiritual practice. Now, I didn't talk too much about that in this episode, but I'm going to be talking about spirituality in a very practical way in a future episode, so stay tuned and look out for that. And the way to do the peripheral vision technique is to shift how you use your eyes, to move from foveal vision, where you're focused on detail and specificity when you're narrowing in, to peripheral vision, where you allow the eyes to soften. You allow your vision to widen and broaden. You become aware of what's to the left of you, the right of you, above you, and below you, without moving your head. It's about creating that more all-encompassing awareness. And then you want to spend at least 5 minutes in this place during the day. The more practice, the better though. You might want to go for peripheral vision walks like I do. Or you can maybe even set your watch for a specific time each day and then spend as long as you can in peripheral vision for an hour when your watch goes off. I think that's a great little technique. So thank you once again for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed it, if you could subscribe or follow wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, if you're feeling especially generous, if you could leave me a review, that would be absolutely fantastic. It really does help. So enjoy the rest of your week, whatever you're doing, and I'll speak to you in the next episode.